please. Evening, everyone.
Evening.
Right, straight on with it then. So, apologies for absence.
I've had apologies from Councillor N. Oakes.
Other than that, we haven't seen Roy yet.
No.
We may do yet. Okay, next item then. Do we accept the apologies for absence?
Yep.
Yeah. Next item, declarations of interest. Anyone declared disclosable pecuniary interests, other interests, request for dispensation, etc.
There we go.
One more
I
time.
would like to declare the fact that I have been a member of the Blackthorn Neighbourhood Plan Working Committee.
I'd like to declare on my honourable St Christopher Drive President.
Okay, that's it. Next item is participation from interested parties or members of the public. I don't know if anyone is planning on saying anything.
Members of the public.
You are? No.
We've just been here to watch.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Well, there's only really one item on the agenda tonight, and that is to receive an update on the neighbourhood plan. So, I don't know, Emma, do you want to give an update on Friday, or would you prefer I do
Well,
this?
I've handed this out to everybody
As
to
an
have a
update.
quick read. This is the update from the
It's
meeting that we had on the 29th.
The public haven't seen it, presumably.
No.
So it's probably worth me
Are
just...
we allowed to see it?
Well, we will be published
Yeah.
at the end of the meeting. Yeah. It's not been published yet, but it will be.
I know that.
Yeah. I mean, basically, if I summarise what it says for everyone, we had a meeting on Friday with North Hampshire County Council, which was really to discuss the representations that they made in response to our consultation. They said at our last neighbourhood plan meeting that they felt that the consultation fell short of the legal requirements of a Section 14 consultation in a number of areas, partly in that there wasn't a published policies map, and partly that the supporting documentation which shows the methodology for selecting the proposed development sites and also the strategic environmental assessment of those sites, which is part of the process that is done in arriving at those sites for consideration in the plan. Now, I think it's fair to say that the members of the working group who were involved in that work, which was some time ago now, do feel that all of that work was done, but despite that, we haven't apparently met the necessary standards to demonstrate that work was done at that time, admittedly some time ago. What ENC went on to explain to us was that they have now pushed forward an accelerated plan for their own district plan. So this is partly as a result of the proposed move to a unitary authority. So the chairman of ENC has basically said to the planning team there that he expects them to progress the district plan to a point where it's approved in advance of the unitary authority being started in April 2020, which isn't that far away really if you think about it, only 18 months away. And bearing in mind how long it's taken us to get to where we are, that sounds like quite a tall order. And I think certainly the gentleman from ENC who we were discussing it with certainly seemed to feel they had their work cut out to do that. What we then went on to discuss was that with those timescales, it could get very confusing for the public. Basically, if we progress our neighbourhood plan and ENC progress their district plan in the timescales that they need, we'll end up going back out to consultation to the public at about the same time and consulting on two different documents, which may be very similar, but will not be the same. So it was really, certainly the people in the meeting on Friday felt there was a real credibility gap here in terms of having a consistent message for people and not creating confusion in the minds of the public. I would say that ENC were at pains to say they're not saying we shouldn't progress with our neighbourhood plan. They were very much saying it's our decision. They still say they'll support us in working to do that if that's what we decide. But they do feel that we need to go back to consult with an environmental and a planning consultant, ACOM, who would help fill the gaps or potentially fill the gaps in some of the documents that we have, although they did raise the concern that actually it could have raised new issues because when they go and do that work they might actually throw up questions about the approach that we've taken. So we basically discussed two options. One is to continue as is, and the issues around that, which is more or less what I've just said, or alternatively to take the work that has already been done, to work with ENC to incorporate into the district plan, and to go forward with a consolidated district plan which would incorporate, I mean, we're talking about incorporating all of the policies that we have identified, with the possible exception, well, not the possible exception, but there would still need to be some discussion about the development sites, because they have got some concerns over the development sites that we've got in our current plan. They would, the way that their plan would look, there would be a first section which is a sort of generic district plan, and then there would be sections for each town, each major town afterwards. So Arundel would have a section in the district plan, and basically the words that were said at the meeting was it would be very, very much the words that are in our neighbourhood plan, apart from any other reason, because they haven't got the resources to go and write a new one, so they'll take all that work that has been done and incorporate it into their plan. So their timescales are to do all of the work that they need to do to come up with their draft for approval by the ENC Planning Committee late September, to go out for consultation in November. So you see that would be very much the timescales that if we were to try and progress our neighbourhood plan, we couldn't possibly do it sooner than that. So it would be very much occurring at the same time. Have I missed anything, Emma? Is that
I don't think so. I think that's
a pretty good
fine.
summary? That's pretty much what it says in the bit of paper. One thing they were saying was that they wouldn't include the smaller sites. So the smaller sites like Millersfield, Landoff, Wakeley, Close, they're not saying they wouldn't support the development of those sites, but it would be more detailed than they want to include in the district plan. So they would just be quiet on them. But if and when a planning application came through, they would treat it as any other windfall application. And they've said we would meet on a monthly basis and hope to have the plan ready for public consultation by mid-November. Any amendments following the consultation would take place early 2019. And then, I mean, there was a very limited turnout to the meeting, unfortunately, on Friday, partly because of a bit of confusion about dates and times. But what we said at that meeting was that we would bring a recommendation to this meeting to propose that the council stops progressing the neighbourhood plan in isolation and works to incorporate the work that has been done with ENC into the district plan, which personally I think is the most pragmatic approach. However, I mean, this is not just new to you guys in the public, this is also news to quite a lot of people around this table, so I'm anticipating there may be some comment and discussion.
I've got a comment. We're obviously being pushed in one direction, and the concern is, with the neighbourhood plan, it's us, it's our town, we're in control, we've made decisions on how we want it. Now, if we move to we understand the problems and the issues, so we'll put that aside, but effectively, are we in danger, and if the answer is no, then I'm all for it, but are we in danger of losing that control by moving in the direction they want us to go? That's the question I'm going to ask, and if not, then fine. But the feeling is, it's now, whereas we've had control, we're now taking a step back to let somebody else do it. Yeah. And are we going to lose something from it? That's what I want to say.
I mean, I think my view, I mean, I invite Phil Stern. Phil was at the meeting on Friday as well, if he's got anything to yeah, I mean, rather than me repeating what I kind of said before, which I don't think they're pushing too hard, they are genuinely saying it's our choice, but there are practical considerations. Phil?
We extracted a promise that our neighbourhood plan, majority of it would go into and be in the district plan. Therefore, it would be what we wanted, and in theory, the same control applies whether we have our own neighbourhood plan or it goes to district plan. The difficulty is we've got to make sure that the district plan is similar to what we want, and we don't know that yet. So we agreed to have regular monthly meetings with the ENC to discuss the various elements of it, so we can get it like it wants to be. That's the best we can do because we haven't really got any more time now. Now that we've been hit with 4 difficulties, of which 3 we didn't really know much about, and because they have brought forward their timing, we can go on and carry on with the neighbourhood plan. We can do it the way that we wanted to do. But if the district plan comes in first, then we've wasted our time and more consultant fees. I believe that we can get the planning authority, ENC, to put most of our plan into it. It won't be exactly the same because they're already saying we've got too many sites. It's what the town wanted, so maybe that's a point that we ought to stand harder on, which we plan to do when we have our first meeting at the end of the month, assuming you guys want to step out. If we stayed in, it would be well through next year before, because we'd have to go to consultancy again. The whole plan is ripped up because we haven't got the same sites. So we'd almost have to start again.
It's too late then.
Which we... No choice, is there?
We've got
So whilst it's a bit of a bugger's muddle, we're caught between a stone and a hard place because we've been so long getting our plan together, for various reasons, which I'm sure a lot of you know. We've got to a situation now where we haven't got the time to do probably what we'd like to continue to do.
I think the thing that's going to be difficult, I think, is obviously the bit that most people are interested in, which is the development proposals. I think ENC are concerned that having lots of potentially quite big sites, but trying to limit development over the next planned period could be difficult, and they are counselling that could cause problems, and that we might end up with planning applications coming in to continue to develop those sites sooner rather than later. So for that reason, I think they're saying for the larger sites, what they would rather do is basically do the sort of due diligence bit again, look at the assessment criteria, and perhaps not put all of those sites forward, but the ones which seem to be most sustainable.
Shane.
Can I
Sorry,
interrupt?
David, sorry.
You've been wondering your...
Yeah, it's because David picked him up for a
Yes,
vision, sorry.
To say that I would be exasperated if we gave up at this point would be to put it mildly. And with the greatest of respect to ENC, I have some difficulty in accepting their assurances. I have some difficulty in accepting that they will manage the timescales they've set for themselves. My instinct is to engage in a sort of parallel planning process whereby we don't abandon the neighbourhood plan, we continue to try to resolve the difficulties that they've found with it. I still think that they have found more difficulties with it than there are, or there should be. But I think that we could continue to work in parallel. The advantage is that if the ENC district plan is not delivered in the way that they anticipate, when they anticipate, we may be able to be in there first. And there is absolutely no doubt, in terms of Councillor Fuller's point, that if we have a neighbourhood plan, ultimately the principle is that what's in there is what we want to be in there, and perhaps even more importantly, what the town wants to be in there. Now, it may be a while since the town spoke, but the town did speak, and the town said, what we want is a number of developments scattered around the periphery of the town, or in the town, but not more than a certain distance away. And what was produced, in the end, met that aspiration. And it strikes me as a rather strange concept, that if you have a site that is capable of being developed with X number of houses, but you only plan to develop Y number of houses, and you only allocate it for Y number of houses, and that's going to be in a planning document which is supposed to be, in essence, the Bible under which planning applications are then judged. On what basis do ENC seriously expect us to believe that actually if you put forward a site that's capable of being developed to a particular number, that almost inevitably, if applications come in, you're going to have to grant it to that number. In fact, if you're going to operate on that principle, you'd start excluding practically all of the sites that they're thinking about, because one of them could take well over the entire allocation in one go. So if that was entirely developed on that principle, we'd end up with, quote-unquote, overdevelopment. It would all be in one place. It's the one area where they said, if you develop it all in one place, you're going to have potential traffic problems. It's the only thing two traffic surveys threw up. It could be pointing us in that direction, and it's completely the opposite of what the town actually wanted, because it would have all the development in one site. But you look at any of these sites, you look at the St Peter's Road, Cotterstock Road site, there's 140 houses potentially on the Oundle side of that border and another 60 in Gapthorne. Now, that could make 200 houses, and although they may be technically in Gapthorne Parish, they're not going to feel as if they're in Gapthorne Parish, they're not going to look as if they're in Gapthorne Parish, they're going to regard themselves very much as being part of Oundle, they're going to look to Oundle to service them. And so if you, again, you adopt that idea that you can't limit that site, even though there are perhaps perfectly good planning reasons for limiting the development and keeping a large area of green space, then again, what are we going to do? Say that you put it in and anticipate that actually the developer will try and push for more and more and more up to its capacity, or do you then say, well no, actually what we've got to do is be cannier than that and get rid of sites where we could end up with that scenario and end up with what we don't want where we don't want it. The best way of controlling that, ultimately, is still to have our own neighbourhood plan. Now, I can't help but feeling that the problems that are being indicated to us by East Northants, if they wanted to, they could have indicated to us probably 24 months ago.
Yeah.
They knew full well what was going into that plan, they knew the sites, they knew everything, and they said nothing. And then all of a sudden, they start saying things. Call me suspicious if you like, but I get the distinct impression that our plan is being sacrificed in favour of what they want.
Yeah.
And what they want won't necessarily be what we want or what is right for this town. Now, we may ultimately lose this because it may or may not be possible to get home with a neighbourhood plan within the time scale. But I actually feel we're going to get a hell of a lot of flack if we simply abandon the exercise at this point and don't at least try to drive it forward. It doesn't mean to say we can't try and work in parallel with East Northants in case it does end up all on the district plan. But for heaven's sake, let's not abandon all those years of work and all of what we have achieved. And the other thing, just finally, is that some of those developers, most of those developers, are offering us lots of benefits alongside those developments when it was part of an Oundle neighbourhood plan. Are those things going to be offered alongside a district plan? I'll tell you what, I'm extremely sceptical that we get half of what we were potentially going to get under a neighbourhood plan.
My thought, just to add to that, exactly, is that we would lose a lot of credibility, I think, amongst the developers. Which sites should we dump? You know, we've done a lot of work with the individual developers. They're very tricky.
Certainly I'm with David on this subject. I know that we had a meeting and it looked like that was the only way, but to grow and understand a little time to think about it and digest it. I don't see a safer way of protecting Oundle than us to continue with our plan, and drive it as hard as we can. And if it fails at the end through some of these technical issues, then at least we've got the foundation for what will go into the ENC plan. But to give it up now and hand it all over to ENC, I really feel it's too much of a leap of faith.
I do understand the sentiment. I think running through my mind is a question about, do we have to have that debate with the NC at some point anyway, whether it's our neighbourhood plan or it's a district plan. We've presumably got to get to an agreement with them at some point. David?
So it all comes back to this idea of control. And I feel very strongly, and thank you, David, because you've given us a sense of direction now, I think. And I think we need to keep control of what we've started. And whether we see it to the end is another matter. But I think the town will support us in a far better way by knowing that we stuck to our guns. We worked hard on this, and it's nothing to it's forces beyond our control.
I mean, I do think that the vast majority of what we have done will find its way into the district plan. I am still concerned about timescales. I mean, realistically, are we going to get a plan in the state that it needs to be by the end of September, which is when ENC's district plan will be, and get it out to the public? Because no, I mean, what's our track record?
What confuses me in this is that ENC says they can do all the work, and get their credible plan out in that timescale.
They have full-time resources, which we
Yeah,
don't.
they're consultants working on
They're
this.
on holiday in August. To be realistic, they all go on holiday in August. Nothing gets done.
I
Well,
don't know,
probably
I don't
not
know
the
about
officers,
officers.
I
What
don't
about the
think. And
officers?
they've got consultants working on this at the moment.
I mean,
But they're talking about going back to the fundamentals and the environmental study and the other studies at the beginning of this process. They said we have to go back to, our belief is that we've got all that work in place anyway.
but we haven't been able
We
to
haven't.
demonstrate it.
We haven't.
I know that's our belief, but we haven't been able to demonstrate it. That's the problem.
But they can demonstrate it.
They've said that they will help and they will get the work done. But what they've said is what it may do is it may throw up more concerns and it may push us back even further.
Or it might validate entirely the first place. Because we did do a lot of work, and a lot of the questions they've asked were answered. Whether it is possible to retrospectively create the paperwork trail that is needed, I simply don't know. But it does seem to me that we still have potentially the opportunity to do it. If we are going to do it, we are going to have to commit to it. In reality, it would appear to mean that we have to approach yet another consultant. I have to say that I think it raises a series of issues about certain services that we've had previously. Because the whole point of those services was to deliver a plan that was compliant with everything it needed to be compliant with. Now we're now being told it isn't. Now, either the planning consultant got it wrong or ENC are not playing fair. I don't know which, because I'm not sufficient of an expert. But we may need to go and find an expert
Can I just let you, because you've
who
been
could probably do
patiently
this pretty quickly.
to say something.
I shall ask some questions, because having not been involved in the early stages, am I right in saying that whatever we put forward and we choose to put forward, ENC decide if it goes to the next stage?
Yes, that's, well, I mean,
Is
again,
that-
I'm not
is that
involved
right?
either, but I mean, that's my understanding, yeah.
But there's no way we
We're
could
not
carry
exactly-
independently.
We've exactly got a lot of people in the room.
No, unfortunately.
Okay.
The
And secondly,
only way of controlling that ultimately would be a judicial review if they acted unreasonably. That would tie the entire process up in knots, because by the time we got into that, A, it would cost everybody a fortune, B, it would probably scupper both our plan and the district plan simultaneously, which will then let the developers in by the back door. So, it's a kind of heads they win, tails we lose scenario if we're not careful.
and
It
secondly,
may not have to be like that.
in terms of getting consultants in, how long does that process and how much does that cost normally?
It costs quite a bit.
Well, they did say that ACON would do it for us, didn't they, without charge?
Yeah, well, it was because ACON are working with them and he'd had that conversation with ACON, but he wasn't sure when they would be able to do it.
Yeah, that was the issue.
Yeah.
So there is a service that could be provided by a consultant. I don't, who puts above that, I don't know, but it doesn't come to us. But the issue is they're working flat out on the district plan. So,
And then the other problem is as ours gets delayed, we already know from at least one of the developers when they're expecting to put an application in for outline planning, and that's at the end of this year. So we may not, they may overtake us, and then we've got nothing.
So potentially we could go forward with our own plan, which would cost more and potentially miss out the chance to be dovetailed in with the district plan.
Although they've said that they will continue putting, they will put something in there for Amble, didn't they? Whatever we're doing.
Yeah. They said they can't afford to wait for us any longer,
No,
so
they
they've
won't
got
wait.
to.
They won't leave Amble with nothing.
So they, if they hit their deadlines, come mid-November, there'll be a public consultation going out, which includes a big section on the development for Amble. So my concern is if we don't engage with them,
Nobody's suggesting that we don't engage. We will use with parallel planning. In essence, we work with them and we work on our own. And incidentally, in terms of the cost, I think we should seriously start looking at going back to previous consultants and saying we paid you a hell of a lot of money to deliver our solar plan and actually was compliant. It isn't compliant. Where's our money back, please? And that is not meant flippantly.
Or at least ask them why it's not compliant. I mean, I think that's only fair because we paid the money and it's not come up with it. But the other important thing is we seem to be over a barrel on this one. And in some ways, I think what we've got to do is follow Councillor Chappell's line and try and run it in parallel if we possibly can, as far as we possibly can. Because at any one point, East Northampton could actually, they can just keep putting spanners in the works all the way along the process. And just hold, well, actually, that's not right and that's not right. I'm just being slightly suspicious of it. But I think we, as already been stated, we owe it to the town, we owe it to ourselves, because we've paid money for it, we've done it in good faith, we've done it with vigour, although it's taken time. Lots of people have put lots of effort into it, and the things that will drop off, and I agree completely, will be the things like the cycle routes, the pathways, the housing for affordable housing, the housing for the elderly, the health bits, all these, the wonderful things that make a community work properly and effectively will be conveniently dropped off because developers don't care about those things. They just care about money. And we've got to make sure we deliver, or try to deliver, at least at the end of the process, we can hold our heads up and say, we did it, but we were scuppered by A, B, C, D, and greed in the end. But if things like the things that Phil's worked for, like you gave a wonderful demonstration about where the cycleways were going to go and everything was going to go. If that all gets blown out of the water,
then it would be painful to have to talk about stopping the Neighbourhood plan when I've been at it now for what, 5 or 6 years?
Absolutely.
But we have to be pragmatic.
Well, that's why I think there is a pragmatic
There are
view
4 areas where the
through.
plan is wrong according to ENC. We discussed all 4 areas, we know exactly where they are, and we know what the problems are. And some of those problems are because rules have changed since we started this 3 years ago.
That's the problem.
And we're now catching up with that, if you like, the hard way. We can go on and carry on and do our own plan and be our own people. And yes, I want all those sites to be in place so I can get cycle track money. But the first thing that will happen is the district plan will only have, because we talked about it, will only have probably 3 or 4 sites in it. Maybe 5. We don't know. The only extraction that we got from them was that it was a maximum of 300 houses, which is what we've got in the Neighbourhood plan anyway. And that we would talk each month and negotiate as best we could for the plan to be just like we have already prepared, which they agree is a good plan.
Well, can we not run the thing parallel until it's the last minute?
Can I just bring us back to resources again? I mean, there's lots of people saying they really want to see this go forward. We had a stony silence when people were asked to put themselves forward to work on the Neighbourhood Plan group. It's failed to meet once since the previous Neighbourhood Plan meeting a month ago. The only meeting we've had was with ENC, and the only people who turned up were me and Phil. So, realistically, are we seriously saying that we around the table are now going to commit to putting serious hours into it in order to get it in shape in the timescales that are required? Because, I've sat in this room, I've only been a councillor for less than 12 months, I've sat in this room hearing the previous mayor say, we need to get this behind it, we need to put an effort in, and it's all progressed painfully slowly.
But is there still not a chance where it can, where we can hold out for the things we need in Arundel to the very last minute?
Absolutely.
Even if we could take option 2, which I think, as a pragmatist as well, I think that's probably our only option. But we will, at least we seem to hold our heads up and say, hang on, we wanted this, and you're chopping away at it.
No one's saying we shouldn't do that. Absolutely, I totally agree with that. I mean, you know, ENC want to meet with us before the end of this month. You know, so that would be when they start to have some of those discussions. And I guess we can always, review our position after those discussions start to take place. But I don't really see that there's any alternative to do that.
I've always sympathy with what you're saying about people engaging, but on the other hand, if we're going to engage consultants, we're paying for somebody else to do the work.
Yeah, so they do the that's the
They're going to do the work, not us.
Yeah.
They do it under our direction and supervision.
Yeah, who's the direction of supervision?
The difficulty is going to be when two sets of work are done and one beats the other in terms of timing. Then that which is in first, our neighbourhood plan or the district plan, will take priority.
And at the moment, nobody can tell me that it won't necessarily be our neighbourhood plan that gets there first. And it has the legitimacy that at the end of the day, a neighbourhood plan has to get through a public referendum and have the support of the town. Frankly, the district plan doesn't. You don't have to pay attention to what people in this town think at the end of the day, because there isn't a process for holding it to account in the same way as our neighbourhood plan process has.
Using
So,
inspectors.
Ours has a lot more legitimacy at the end of the day in terms of public democracy than does the district plan. I'm not saying we shouldn't work in parallel. I am saying that what we should do is look very, very urgently at, is there a consultant out there who thinks that they could work with what we've got, provide what is missing, guide us as to whether ENC are actually right, tell us if our previous consultants were actually scuppered by changes in the rules or whether they didn't actually seem to understand the rules, because I don't know which it was. But we can do that, and we can still have our meetings with ENC and try and engage. I mean, it isn't, of course, entirely easy. We are unpaid volunteers, and it's very difficult when ENC want to conduct meetings, understandably, but during the daytime, when some of us have got jobs or businesses to run. I would very much have wanted to be there on Friday. It simply turned out to be utterly impossible. But I have committed hours and hours of my own time into this, and I can continue to do so and would continue to do so if that were the decision that we take. At the end of the day, we have to decide whether at this stage we abandon what we've done or whether we try to see if we can save it and make it what we want it to be.
It's not a case of abandoning, is it? It's how best to weave it into the district plan.
Too strong to say abandon.
Yeah,
Abandon may not necessarily be the right word, but the reality is there will not be the drive out of the NC to produce the sort of add-on benefits that our plan was going to deliver to this town. Just think of one or two of the things that might or might not suddenly happen. If we don't get the cemetery extension, we will have to introduce a bylaw that says nobody can die in this town because there's nowhere to put them if they do. I mean, we're literally that critical. We wouldn't have our festival site. Potentially there wouldn't be the additional cricket facilities. What about the allotments on the Millers Field development, which incidentally ends up being some sort of a windfall site, potentially, if it comes forward as a planning application. I fear that we could lose a hell of a lot, and it's not just the cycle routes. It could be the vast majority of those things, all the things that actually help to make this neighbourhood plan the success it could potentially have been and might still be capable of being. It's too early to give up on it, in my submission.
But if
we
those
do carry on with the neighbourhood plan, we'd have to get a consultant in to finish it off for us and do the work that's needed. And and we have to have you guys helping us. At the meeting the other day on Friday, there were 2 of us plus Emma. That's not enough. That's not a commitment to make a neighbourhood plan work. It's another thing to think about, and I'm outside of you, so I can perhaps say it. But if we're going to get another consultant in to make it, the neighbourhood plan work, and I do like to hear that, of course I do, but it has to be pragmatic, and we have to be able to do it. And if there's no one leading the project, if there's no one pushing the project, then it'll be like it's been before, going into the long grass for 6 months. In my humble opinion.
A consultant can, of course, work to our sort of timescales, which also means that if we say that the pragmatic thing to do is to meet you in the evenings rather than in the daytime, that's factored into the way they work. I think which is easier for the majority of people around this table. It may be that most people would find daytimes easier than evenings. Speaking for myself, evening meetings are better. When we had a previous consultant and we were having meetings at 5:30, they were almost impossible for me to get to. When we were having meetings at 7 or 7:30, I think I went to every single one of them, practically weekly, 4 months.
Isn't the alternative view of looking at it that it's unlikely that we're going to get the neighbourhood plan to the referendum stage if, reading between the lines, ENC won't let us push it forward? So actually it's a matter of saying we'd like to have this, we'd like to have that, and that's what we wanted, but we're not going to get any of those because it'll never get voted on. Whereas if we come in at an early stage with the district plan, we're more likely to get some of that embedded at an early stage. Is that?
Well, if you are of the opinion that ENC would contrive to block the neighbourhood plan regardless of whether it was compliant, then you're right. But if we got a consultant who could put it into a compliant state, on the face of it, ENC couldn't then turn around and say it's not in a fit state, in which case it could go through Reg 14, Reg 16 and proceed to a referendum. Whether or not we can make that beat the district plan remains to be seen. But it won't beat it if we don't try.
There's another aspect, Mr Mayor, that we have to consider, is that we don't have a neighbourhood plan, or we don't have a district plan. The developers will come, I'm surprised they haven't already come charging in with 1,200 houses, which is, we know the figure they want to build in Arundel overall. But if we don't have any ammunition to fire in a neighbourhood plan or a district plan, that could easily happen tomorrow.
Applications could easily happen. However, the core spatial strategy still talks about a certain number of developments, and 1,200 is 4 times that. So that isn't to say that there isn't the potential of some control. And the RNOTP technically still runs until 2021. Of course you'll have an argument with the developers saying it's out of date, and so on. But it isn't an inevitability, but it's certainly a risk. But that, frankly, that risk is there whatever decision we take at the moment. Developers could decide not to wait for the district plan, but to chance their arm and see whether or not, if they put in an application before there is either a district plan or a neighbourhood plan, whether they get there. It's a gamble. You may well find it's turned down by ENC and they'll have to take it to an appeal, and who knows what would happen with the appeal. But I'm not sure that we should necessarily be reaching our decision on that kind of negative basis.
I think, Mr Mayor, you've got to get the council to decide whether they want to carry on the neighbourhood plan. It's as simple as that or not. And give it to ENC
Well,
to do for us.
we've had 2 alternative proposals already, basically, haven't we? We've had a proposal which was the summary on the document that you circulated, which basically says that we take the work that's been done to date and work with ENC to incorporate it in. And maybe doesn't say explicitly in the document, but clearly I think the sentiment around the room, and my understanding of what that was to mean, was that we will be pushing very hard for the benefits that the neighbourhood plan, as written in draft, they're incorporated into the ENC district plan. And I know it's only one meeting, and I know, you know, maybe wishful thinking, but they did seem to be receptive and positive about that. For instance, when we talked about the cemetery, the Stoke Door roadside, the cemetery, they said, oh yes, we can understand that's important, that will be needed. And, you know, so those sorts of things should, I would expect, be incorporated into the plan, whether it be the neighbourhood or district or not.
They also talked about having a separate policy for Fletton Field, as keeping it as an open space, as opposed to.
Yeah, they weren't sure they were going to do that, but they did. They touched on that as well in the meeting. The alternative proposal that David made is, I think, that we continue to work in parallel. So don't shut the door on ENC, engage with them, hold those meetings, but at the same time try to engage a new consultant, put a working group together that's going to be able to support that work, and move ahead with the neighbourhood plan in parallel as quickly as we can, in order to protect ourselves if the district plan doesn't, you know, runs into its own problems and doesn't appear as quickly as ENC would like to think it will. So I don't know whether, I mean, the two are, I guess, not. They're different. I guess you could argue.
It's not an amendment of the other one, is it? The opposite of the other. So
it's not the opposite, because I think you were still willing to work with ENC to develop the Arundel section of the district plan.
Oh yeah.
So you could
We need to do that to get our work into their plan, no matter what we decide or decide here. And we can do that. We do that anyway without having to put a proposal forward. We have to decide whether we want to do our own neighbourhood plan and carry on with it.
I don't know how I formulate that into a proposition that we can vote on, though, because if we do the second one, which is we continue to work on our neighbourhood plan and the district plan, and we get a majority in favour of that, and we also get a majority in favour of stopping work on the neighbourhood plan and adopt the district plan. Then what do we do?
do you put a proposal to work with ENC on the district plan? Vote on that, and then say, do we have a parallel plan? Vote on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I think it's quite important. I mean, I'd rather be there with them than have them undermining all the time.
Yeah.
And I think if we go in as a negotiation quite strongly at the beginning and saying, look, these things are fundamental to our progression. The things that we want are they're set. You're going to have to work around and try and get some assurances from them that actually they just won't be dropped off as we go along. Yeah. I agree with Councillor Chappell insofar as we should go back to our consultant and Councillor Malcolm and say, hang on, why didn't you know?
The thing was, with our first, sorry, if I just put it in at you, with the consultant, I don't know about the ones before I was here, but James Wilson, he got another job and he was halfway through doing the work, but then was no longer part of our plan.
So we can't actually go.
Yeah. The second one, Mike Hayburn, it was decided that we wouldn't continue using it because he wasn't being as fast and dynamic as we wanted him to be.
Right, okay.
So I don't think you can go back to either of them and say, actually, you didn't deliver what you said.
It's good to know that. Thank you for that. So, but I think we need to still work with, as a strong negotiation with them rather than, well, all right, we need to go in there and I feel, strongly that we should. It seems without, fingers have been sort of indirectly pointed at that there's not enough people doing enough work. But I mean, I think it's really quite important.
I didn't mean that as a criticism.
No,
because I know people have got busy lives and got things to do.
Of course, I wasn't taking criticism.
This is the whole point: is that we
yeah, absolutely.
We're all volunteers.
It's the crux of the argument.
Yeah.
We're busy people, and there's the crux of the argument is we really haven't got the time to do it. But I think there is the strength of feeling for if we work with them and people can get to the meetings. If we can get to the meetings and plan the meetings effectively, then we can show a field strength from our team to say, okay, you can have this and this, but you're not going to have any of that. So we have a decent negotiation with them, not a
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
Sorry, if you want to move first.
Sorry, I want to go back a pace. I don't suggest we go back to the previous consultants. We are where we are. We need, if we're going to take Councillor Chapel's direction, we've got to engage somebody. It's just somebody new. The others sort of, are not here anymore. So there's no point in going back and blaming them.
No, it wasn't. I wasn't thinking.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, if we go to the ENC, I think we'll be in a stronger position. And if we're actually continuing with our own plan, rather than having given up, we'll leave it to them.
No, absolutely. But that's the whole, because we're caught between a rock and a hard place. We need to be strong and carrying on with it, but we can't be compliant with their wishes. We have to have our own, because it has to be ours. We still have to have that. But how much money are we looking at to get another consultant? Is one available in the time scale? These are important questions. And are they going to be competent? Because it's no good for us to throw money at another consultant, only to find that actually they haven't done it in time either, or they've stumbled along as well. Better to, I feel now, if we can field strength and move forwards, as Councillor Chapel has stated, and try and keep as much of ours together and run in parallel to the very last minute, till they trip us up, or don't trip us up, or say, yes, you're right, we're going to keep it. Because nothing's set in stone. They get by 2020 or 2025, they'll probably shift the goalposts so it'll all be moved.
Don't forget, they won't be here in 2020.
Absolutely. So the whole thing could unravel at any point anyway.
Yeah. But in terms of, my view is in terms of our power to negotiate with the ENC, it's minimal. Whereas in our own plan, we are Outdoor, we're talking about Outdoor, we're talking about only Outdoor. So yes, we have this technical issue with the plan, but I think the idea of keeping it going in parallel, keep ENC engaged, keep engaging with them. But if it was any other issue, if it was a financial issue, if it was a personnel issue, we'd get an external consultant in and say, is this right or is this not right? And that's what I think that we need to try and do, is find somebody as a consultant on the plan and say, is it as bad as we're being told?
Okay, all right.
If it is, then fair enough, we've got to give it up. But if it's not, let's carry on, because the document will exist even if nobody takes any notice of it.
Okay.
It's what Howell people said that they wanted.
Okay. Can I take, I think it was Ian's suggestion that we will vote first on the proposition is that we work with ENC to incorporate the neighbourhood plan as currently in draft into the Oundle section of the district plan in accordance with the discussion that we had on Friday. So I'll propose that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, David Fuller. And those in favour? So that's a majority anyways. Can't count. 6 of us, I think. Okay, and then the second proposition is that in addition...
That one was that we incorporate our plan in the district plan.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
But not cease work on the neighbourhood
Oh, but
plan.
not cease work.
Just
In that case,
we're all in favour now.
That's what you said.
Oh, just that's why I was wondering
It
whether people... Yeah.
It is. I didn't say anything about stopping work on that plan. I just said we work with
you
these.
didn't actually say anything about continuing work on it either, which is what
Well, no, because that's the second vote. That was the proposition. There's two different propositions, right? So we've agreed so far that we will continue to work. We will start to work with ENC whether or not we continue with the neighbourhood plan.
Right, okay.
Okay. Yeah. So that was that one.
Yes, sorry, on that one, and would you vote for it?
Yeah,
Right, so shall we just do that? I've got proposers and seconders. Could you just all vote again on that one?
So that is
That's
now,
all.
right. So having agreed that we will now work with ENC to incorporate that in that, the second proposition is that we will continue to work independently, appointing a new consultant to try to progress the neighbourhood plan further and to succeed with the Section 14 and 16 consultations and ultimately a referendum.
I'll second that. we're voting on.
Yeah, those in favour? 6 people, I think. So,
Sorry, can you
6
just
people.
put your hands up again?
I know it's a bit late now we've voted, but do we have enough information to do that? Do we know how much it costs? Can we
No, we haven't got any
The
information.
reality is we now have to explore that.
Yeah.
And if it transpires that it's going to cost us £50,000, we may very well revisit the decision. Let's find out.
Can I ask a question, please, Mayor? Councillor Humphreys particularly has been using the word our team must negotiate. Now, I don't, who is in our team?
Well, I'm assuming it's the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group, which is Councillor Robinson, myself, thank you, Councillor Chappell, sorry David, and Chris.
Roger
Right.
then, and also Neil Fraser.
Yeah. So potentially so 2 of the other previous working party group.
Let's clear that up.
A sad football analogy, I'm afraid.
Okay, I think that concludes the agenda for this evening, and
Thank you.
and we haven't encroached on the planning committee's time, so thanks for your contributions.
Yes.